Cheryl Dorsey is a retired Los Angeles Police Department sergeant. She's also the author of Black and Blue, the creation of a social advocate. She joins me now from Los Angeles. Good to see you. Cheryl, let's start with Los Angeles, where you are. Looting, fires. What is your sense of where this is all headed there?
Well, I mean, obviously, I'm very disappointed because I lived through this in 1992 with the riots, and I understand the frustration level. At the end of the day, I don't know that this is going to accomplish whatever it is that these protesters are seeking to accomplish. Destruction of property and injury to others is certainly not the way to go. So I'm just very disappointed.
Yeah, as you said, you were a police sergeant. You supervised protest, riot control. When you look at what is happening, I mean, what are the cops doing right and what are they doing wrong in the country in terms of containing the violence, keeping the peace, and we are seeing videos of what could be called overreactions.
Well, we're seeing examples of everything from, one end of the spectrum to the other. We're seeing officers show great restraint. We're seeing officers who I'm not in their head, but it would appear that they understand, while they may not condone some of the foolishness that's going on, they are giving some great latitude in terms of being able to exercise their First Amendment and protest, those that are doing it peacefully. And then we've seen the other end of the spectrum where in New York, officers plow through a crowd of protesters with their vehicle. And so,
yeah,
tensions are high on both sides.
I think that's probably a good way of putting it. I mean, do you think the rage among the protesters can be tamed? I mean, given people given reasons to think that substantive change will come, because it hasn't in many ways.
Well, no, there hasn't been any change, and I think that's part and parcel of the problem. We've been living this surely for at least 6 years. I mean, it was just barely 6 years ago that we started on this spate of deadly police uses of force with Mike Brown and Eric Garner and John Crawford, Tamir Rice, Ezell Ford, and everything that's happened since then. Sandra Bland, and most recently Tatiana Jefferson, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, not killed by the police but by a former police officer. And so the death, the murder of George Floyd was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, I'm wondering whether it troubles you that the president injects politics into what is happening, and it is a very socially based issue. But he's warns what he calls liberal Democrat mayors and governors and so on. He blames left-wing extremists without any evidence. I mean, it's politically convenient to blame outside forces rather than acknowledge both the homegrown organic anger over the death of a black man as George was killed, and also the sort of deeply held distress that the black community has about police actions.
Well, listen, he's speaking to his base, and in some instances we hear a dog whistle, and in other instances we hear from this president a foghorn. And so we've seen how he refers and almost affectionately laments over the Nazi KKK members who were responsible for the death of a young woman in Charlottesville, North Carolina. Those are good people, and men who carry AK-47s to the state capitol to protest what seemingly is in our own best interests, social distancing, good people. And so now, he wants to label these that are misbehaving. And listen, I've seen some white folks carrying copious amounts of property out of businesses. And so it's not just any one ethnicity. I think there are opportunists of all shapes and stripes. And I think that this president encourages this kind of foolishness, and it saddens me because I think to some extent the protesters who are misbehaving and are damaging property and looting are playing into his hands.
I just briefly wanted to get your thoughts on this, because one of the most disturbing aspects of what we saw happen to George Floyd was the inaction of the other three officers. What kind of sense or perverted sense of solidarity makes an officer look on in that situation and do nothing?
It's the police culture. It's the wanting to make sure your partners understand you've got their back, for those who misbehave and abuse authority. Some of those officers that were on scene, at least one of them, Officer Tao, has been involved in a use of force where he broke a man's teeth and cost that city $25,000. And so there are no angels in that group. And this is what they do. They do it with impunity. There's nothing been done to deter the bad behavior. And so now, since they want to all stand together, I think they should all stand together in jail. And so that, too, is part and parcel of why there's so much angst. How do you stand, acquiesce, condone, be a co-conspirator to the murder of someone, and yet you're still roaming the streets freely? It's offensive.
Causing a lot of the anger. Cheryl Dorsey, always good to see you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.